Hello there, beautiful quilters and creatives. Welcome back to the Quilters Coach podcast with Dara. I'm so glad we're here today. We moved through November together. I want you to know that I'm committed to supporting you all throughout the holiday season. This is the time when so many of us start feeling that familiar tug of old patterns, whether it's reaching for food when you're stressed, clicking add to cart when we're feeling empty, or scrolling endlessly when we should be resting or being more creative or connecting with other people. Here's what I've learned after losing 50 pounds and coaching hundreds of quilters and creatives. We don't have a knowledge problem. We all know how to eat well, how to budget, how to set boundaries. What we have is a thinking problem. When we don't know how to process our emotions, we distract ourselves instead. We shop, we eat, we scroll, we stay busy, and we try to get our worth from other people. But there is another way, and that's exactly what we're going to explore together this month. Whether you're struggling with buying more fabric than 3 lifetimes could use, dreading upcoming family gatherings, or just feeling overwhelmed by everything on your plate, I've got tools that actually work. They address what's really happening underneath all those behaviors. Grab your favorite mug, settle in, and let's talk about how to navigate this season from a place of calm confidence instead of white-knuckling survival. So today we're talking about something that might hit close to home, especially if you just spent Thanksgiving weekend with family. This is episode 227, Getting Along with Your Spouse or Another Close Relationship. How many of you found yourself reaching for food, not because you were hungry, but because you were frustrated with your spouse, stressed with a family dynamic, or feeling resentful about expectations you felt you couldn't voice? If you're nodding along, this episode is definitely for you. Today, we're diving into how relationship dynamics, especially with the people closest to us, can trigger our emotional eating patterns, and more importantly, how to break free from these cycles. So here's something most people don't realize. The same thinking pattern that keeps us stuck in difficult relationship dynamics are often the exact same patterns that drive us to emotional eating. And if any of you have taken advantage of my free 12-lesson class on why we buy all this fabric, we are revisiting this same concept. So we create what I call cases against people. We decide ahead of time how they're going to act, what they're going to say, what they're thinking, and we get so stuck in our story about them that we can't think clearly about our own needs or responses. Sound familiar? It's the same thing we do with food. We create stories. I always overeat at parties. I can't control myself around dessert. I'm just not good at this. But here's the thing. When we're stuck in someone else's thinking, trying to manage their feelings, predict their reactions, or control their behavior, we lose access to our own wisdom. And that's often when we turn to food for comfort. So if this sounds like you, it's okay. If this happens to you, I want you to imagine a lawyer who has been given a case. So he's presented with the person he's either defending or prosecuting. And that lawyer is going to spend all their time looking at the evidence for if they're guilty or not. We do that with our own brains. I'm going to give you an example of one of the ladies in the program, and I have changed name to respect her. In our coaching program, Tammy had this situation that I coached her on. She has retired now, and when she retired, she thought she'd have so much extra time. She has the same thinking patterns, and even though she has more time during the day because she's not going to work, she's still falling into the old habits. So one of the problems is she feels really stuck. Every night she feels obligated to sit and watch TV with her husband, but she doesn't really want to. She wants to be quilting or working on other projects. She feels a lot of resentment and she feels frustrated. And there's been some times where he said, well, I like it when you sit with me. But the problem is, so she has created the story that if she didn't sit with him every single night, he would feel neglected. So night after night, she sits there feeling resentment, wishing she could do something else. And what do you think happened with all that resentment? It has to go somewhere. she would have her rebellious days and not even realize that she was having rebellious days. She took her daughter and granddaughter to the airport and then spent 8 hours gallivanting, going to different shops, doing different errands. The whole time it was fun, but the whole time she felt guilty. So she actually didn't replenish herself. She actually made things worse for herself. These rebellious days didn't make her feel better. They made her feel worse. So then she doubled down on people pleasing and tried to make up for it. So she has this exhausted cycle, resentment at the top. There's more rebellion. When she has rebellion, she feels guilt. When she feels guilt, she goes to more people pleasing. And when she feels more people pleasing, she now has more resentment. So you see why she's feeling stuck? It's because she's just doing the same cycle over and over again. But the plot twist, the very next day, after one of these rebellious episodes, she drove 2.5 hours each way. So 5 hours driving plus a funeral, whole day away from her husband, zero guilt about it. She couldn't spend one evening reading a book without feeling guilty about neglecting her husband, but she could spend an entire day away for a funeral without any guilt. So what do you think the difference is? For the funeral, Tammy's story was, this is important. This is the right thing to do. My husband would understand and supports me in this. For wanting to quilt instead of watch TV, her story is, this is selfish. He'll feel hurt. I should put his needs first. But here's what Tammy discovered through our coaching. Although her husband has requested to spend time together, she's never created healthy boundaries with him about how much time she will spend watching TV and how much time she'll be quilting. And the problem is, after 46 years of marriage, she feels so defeated that she's still having these same kinds of problems. So now what is she doing? She's judging herself for not communicating better. She also spends a lot of time in his head. So she just makes all these decisions based on his potential problems and his thoughts. So she is living in his imaginary thoughts instead of her own real needs. Now, this is where I'm sharing Tammy's story because I know so many of you recognize parts in your own relationship. Maybe it's not about TV or your spouse. Maybe feeling like you have to cook elaborate meals because your family expects it, but you've never asked what they actually want. Not speaking up about family holiday plans because it will cause drama, but you end up stressed and overeating instead. Saying yes to social events you don't want to attend because people will be disappointed, then eating your feelings about it later. Are you relating to these? Not taking time for your quilting because it's selfish when there are dishes to do, even though no one has asked you to do them right away. Or maybe when your husband offers a cookie before going to bed and just saying yes because you don't want to hurt his feelings. Or if your husband makes dinner and you don't really like it, just eating it anyway and not saying anything, and then just having that same drama come up and up. These are all real life examples from the ladies inside the program. In every case, you're making decisions based on what we think other people think instead of what we actually know to be true. So here's why this matters so much for emotional eating. Resentment is one of the most common emotions that drives us to food. When we feel like we can't express our real needs, when we feel trapped by obligations we've never actually negotiated, when we feel like we're giving and giving without getting what we need back, that resentment has to go somewhere. And for many of us, it goes into food. We eat our resentment. We eat our unexpressed needs. We eat our frustration with situations we feel powerless to change. And here's the truth. Most of the time, we're not actually powerless. We're just stuck in stories that aren't serving us. So how do we get unstuck? How do we stop living in other people's imaginary thoughts and start living in our own real needs? First, we have to get honest about the stories we're telling ourselves. Just like Tammy had to realize she never had a boundary talk with her husband about his expectations of how much time to sit, how much time to be away. So ask yourself, what am I assuming about this person? What story have I created about what they need, want, or expect from me? And how much of that story is actually based on real conversations we've had? Second, we have to be willing to have the conversations we've been avoiding. This doesn't mean being confrontational or demanding. It means being curious and honest. Hey, I've been thinking, like I should sit with you every evening, but I'm wondering how you actually feel about it. Would you mind if I spent some evenings quilting or working on other projects? Most of the time, you'll be surprised by the response. The person might say, I didn't know you felt so obligated. Of course, you should do what you enjoy. Actually, inside my program, I have 3 classes on how to have difficult conversations, specifically with a spouse or someone very close to you. So when the conversation doesn't go well, I want you to be realistic. Sometimes you start expressing your real need. The other person might not respond well initially. They might just leave. They might get defensive. They might say, I'm not going to talk to you about this. But here's what I want you to remember. You are not responsible for managing others' emotions. You are responsible for expressing your needs kindly and clearly. You get to decide, what kind of person do I want to be in this situation? If someone else gets upset because you want to spend an evening quilting instead of watching TV, that's information about your ability to self-soothe, not evidence that you're doing something wrong. If someone gets upset because you want to spend an evening quilting instead of watching TV, that's information about their ability to self-soothe. That's about them, not about you. And this is often where we need the most support. Learning to stay in our own lane emotionally while still being loving and kind. As you start to untangle yourself from other people's emotional management, other people's feelings, other people's thoughts, you'll likely notice something interesting happening with your own relationship with food. When you're not carrying all that resentment, when you're expressing your needs instead of stuffing them down, when you're making choices from your own wisdom instead of imaginary obligations, you won't need food to manage those feelings as often. This doesn't happen overnight. These are deep patterns that take time to shift, but the connection is real and powerful. Here's something you can try this week. Notice when you feel resentful or frustrated in a relationship. Instead of immediately reaching for food or stuffing the feeling down, ask yourself, what story am I telling myself about the situation? What am I assuming about what this person thinks or needs? What would happen if I had an honest, kind conversation about this? Just start by noticing the stories you're creating and asking yourself how much of them are actually true. So here's what's beautiful about this work. As you start to relate to people from a clearer, more honest space, your entire nervous system calms down. You're not constantly trying to read minds or manage emotions that aren't yours to manage. You're not carrying around resentment that needs to be eaten or rebellion that needs to be expressed through food. You start to feel more at peace in your relationships, which means you feel more at peace with your body. So just like the lawyer example, imagine you're the lawyer assigned to protect the defendant. But an hour before court, they say you have to switch gears. It's like being on the debate team. It'll be interesting for you to think about these things from a different perspective and to let go of those stories. It's similar to if you ever had a blankie or a soother or something. It's like that way you tell the story, you're really attached to it. So we have to learn to get that detachment. And it'll be very interesting to see what happens with your detachment. So the more you do that for yourself, the more detached you can become from food, right? Because so many of us are emotional eaters. This kind of work, learning to distinguish between your thoughts and other people's thoughts, expressing your needs clearly, managing your own emotions without using food. This is exactly the deep work we do inside my coaching program. And if you've been following along with these November episodes, you've gotten a taste of how all these pieces fit together. The fabric shopping patterns, the holiday food stresses, the relationship dynamics, they're all connected by the same underlying issue, not knowing how to process and express emotions in a healthy way. You can listen to Tammy's story and think, oh, that makes sense. But when you're in the middle of your own relationship dynamic, when your emotions are high and your old patterns are strong, that's when you need support. That's when you need someone to help you see your stories clearly, practice having those difficult conversations, and learn to stay in your own emotional lane while still being loving. If you're ready to stop managing everyone else's emotions and start taking care of your own, if you're tired of eating your resentment instead of expressing your needs, this is your chance. Go to www.darathomason.com. This is your opportunity to make this the last time you have to figure this out alone. Before we wrap up, remember this. You don't have to choose between taking care of yourself and being loving to others. When you stop managing others' emotions and start expressing your own needs clearly and kindly, your relationships actually get healthier. You show up more authentically, you carry less resentment, and you model emotional honesty for everyone around you. I love being the example of what's possible. The goal isn't to become selfish or uncaring. The goal is to become clear about where you end and other people begin. Try that simple practice this week. Notice the stories you're telling yourself about what other people think or need. Ask yourself how much of those stories are actually based on real conversations. You might be surprised by what you discover. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I hope these tools help you navigate the rest of the holiday season with more clarity and less stress. Until next week, when I share more tools and support around your eating and health journey, I want to encourage you to keep creating beautiful things, including beautiful, honest relationships. I'm Dara, and this has been the Quilters Coach Podcast. Take care. If you aren't loving your current life and hear yourself saying things like, I should be happier, I should be getting more done, or question how productive and fulfilled you are, this podcast is for you. I'm Dara Thomason, professional quilter turned life coach for quilters, where I show you how to overcome obstacles like perfectionism, people pleasing, overeating, overcomplicating life, so that you can really start to enjoy your life by learning and using tools for your brain to help you transform your everyday living. Are you ready to make these changes? I'm ready to help. Let's start your transformation one UFO at a time.